happening in the sector. So in some ways, the burden will be on us to also make some new things or do some new things in the sector, including the topic of the day: can we do better by small organizations? And there are a number of organizations. I'll come to what is our policy. So we have resource sharing strategy, how we will prioritize small organizations when we are allocating resources. I'm giving you example of crypto. We 22 organizations together have gone to crypto, and we have been absolutely democratic in putting the proposals together. In fact, we have said that you should restrict, large organizations should restrict their demand. I told SPS, for example, Samaj Pragati Sahayog, don't put up a proposal for 5 blocks. So they said, okay, we'll only put up proposal for 2 blocks. So that is how we are trying to. I will next slide is much more detailed. Second is highlighting small organizations work. In the COVID times, I've been personally requesting members to give me a one-page note and also videos and photos. And I've been putting it out on my own social media handles, such as the LinkedIn and Facebook, and also Twitter. And I'm deliberately making use of Twitter because our politicians are on Twitter also. One example I will give is not a small organization, but example of highlighting NGOs work is Gram Vikas Libby Johnson sent me a note and sent me a picture of mobile van raising awareness. I asked him, can you give me the handle of Mr. Naveen Patnaik, which he duly gave. And lo and behold, I put as soon as I put this Twitter message, it reached to chief ministers, this thing. And Samik Das, who works in the World Bank, told me, yeah, now I know the work that is going on. So I think these are powerful. Social media is very powerful. That is the reason I'm mentioning. And we should use social media to highlight small organizations' work as well. So I've done similar thing in for Uthan and also tweeted Mr. Vijay Rupani there. Likewise, Mr. Ashok Gehlot in case of Manjari Foundation and so on. So idea should be to highlight the work. I hope this will interest you also, Lalita, that how to highlight the organization's work. What is the modern means can be used? We are doing that here. Building capacity in terms of research. We have a research program in RCRC, and 40 organizations participated in research last year, and we had a large sample size. As a researcher, you would know, both of you, we had a sample size of 15,600 households last in the second round. We did 3 rounds, and given that now we have a grant from Umidyar. The reason I'm mentioning a grant because now this year we will be deliberately doing an MOU with small organizations to do research. Small organizations may not have the capacity to do research, so therefore we will be training their staff and their frontline staff who will actually collect data and do either phone interviews or, if possible now, face-to-face interviews with the household. That is a capacity building effort we are doing, keeping small organizations in mind in particular. Programmatic capacity building also we are undertaking. Fortunately, Gates Foundation has agreed to give part of the grant towards building capacity in terms of programs like the livelihood cluster program we are doing with the Ministry of Rural Development. So how to take the organizations from point A to point B so they can perform better, the livelihood outcomes of the programs are better, and therefore they can also say to the government that, we are doing a good job of livelihoods. That is why I am mentioning building capacity, particularly taking the small organizations from A to B. We will also try to do some strategic visioning, missioning work also for the small organizations. Lastly, in the process of building capacities of the organizations, we know that Pradhan type organizations, AKRSP type organizations, FES type organizations, SPS type organizations have very good human resources. They are experts in livelihoods, experts in watershed, and so on. So we are pooling that resources and making them available to small organizations. So there is internal resource transfer we are going to do. Although we want to take help of, we are hoping to take help from Azim Premji University to put whole this capacity building program in some framework. And I will request Amir, you also to help us in as we put together this plan of building capacity in RCRC organizations.
Most certainly, yeah.
Thank you. Now, this is one of the last two slides. This is much more detail. If you are interested, I'll be sending you the PPT also in much more detail. But what is most important in resource sharing strategy is this: how to keep an equilibrium and least amount of grievance, especially when you're dealing with money. So what we did last year was that we gave 2.5 lakh rupees out of the grant for everyone in the first tranche. So everybody gets something rather than some criteria for somebody to get more. And so that would have been difficult. Then after that, next 2 or 3 tranches were built on what would be the need per person and the per organization capacity to handle. This is what we did. Then there were project specific grants. So BMGF gave money to 11 organizations, for 11 organizations in UP, and Argam also gave for a specific project. Then we use certain criteria, and you won't believe that it has been very helpful. People can pick up, people can say this is my proposal based on certain criteria and numerical score. People put it up, and whatever was actually put up there, and the scores were compared, then interviews were done, people accepted in such situations. I find that organizations are very, very mature in RCRC and also generally in the sector. And so we repeated this experience this year also. We said the needy organization should get first 5 lakh rupees, and this is large organizations saying that. There is a generosity of the large organizations to say that, okay, we can get money from somewhere, but this time small organizations should get money. And I will also give credit to crypto and now Dasra that they have been very, very pro and non-discriminatory towards small organizations. So therefore, the last point is maintaining equilibrium in fairness in the network, and those who have run networks, they will realize that how hard it is to keep the interest of the members going, and only if there is unfair treatment, people can leave as well. So I think this is where I will, what is the way forward? Way forward, we are saying that probably there's a need for networks. These networks will build capacities of the small organizations. Second, I think we need to highlight the issues of the small organizations in the government forums. In a social stock exchange, we made sure that the floor of admitting the NGOs on the social stock exchange was lowered to 50 lakh rupees. Initial proposal was 1 crore, but we were able to, Pushpa and I and several other members from civil society were able to impress upon the members of the technical group and with the leadership of SEBI to bring it down to 50 lakh rupees as the eligible this thing. So I would say that I claim some credit or victory in that, but point I'm making is the cause of the small organization should be highlighted in government forums. Third is I'm saying that we need to bunch up organizations and present them to funders like we are doing in crypto. Also, what Catalyst 2030, we are trying to do it in the Now Fund to get 100 organizations, 3 lakh rupees tools who are finding survival difficult. These are the 3 things I thought, and other things I have said, pooling human resources, and several other things I have said. And thank you very much, Amir and Lalita, for giving me this opportunity to speak my mind. I hope this made sense. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, Ved, wonderful, absolutely. These the way in which you could get the story of this new venture that you have started. into this whole conversation was wonderful, because it actually shows how you could work that. To confess to everybody, I am very much a part of that exercise, and from day one, and I know how wonderfully it worked, from a very small beginning to suddenly an explosive one, which reaches 1,300 crores. I mean, that's a formidable figure by any standard. So before I open it up for questions to everybody, and I know that there are enough people here who want to ask this. With my first query for you, based on what we have been seeing over the last few weeks when we have been discussing this issue, is you know how does one provide a credible um, figure on the return on investment to the giver? While it is fine to expect that people will give without any strings attached, but that, for very many reasons, doesn't happen. Um, and given that the funding itself and the future of that funding really does depend on that document, um, how do you find small organizations successfully do this? There are some that fail, but some do it successfully without any great nuclear science or formula that they use. So how does one crack that problem?
Uh, I have no research on it, but I think the innovation is the key.
Uh-huh.
Innovation has the big tech uh, giants in the US. If you talk about Elon Musk, even more. I think human nature is such that we are looking for innovation. We are looking for new ways of solving old problems. So when you put the innovation quotient is high, so I found this work uh, in my Srijan history. I
Mm,
found that if I put up a new idea like horticulture, I introduced in the north in Madhya Pradesh, I found a willing supporter in Tata Trust. Just as an
right.
example, I'm just saying. I think the idea of the Buddha Fellowship. I'll give you another example.
Yeah.
I did not actually seek agreement from the donor and get a grant. Rather, I use existing funds and beg, borrow, steal. I borrow. I actually recruited 12 IIT-IIM fellows. And on one visit of Axis Bank leadership, they visit one organization every year.
Yeah.
So we had a surprise for them that these four IIM young fellows were actually working in the villages, and came out 4 crore rupees check. I am saying that it is the, I think people are looking, even whether you take donors or any human spirit, is that if you come up with an innovative solution to the problem. This is an innovative solution to the HR problem.
Correct.
Solution. So I think this is my. Then you are not really looking for a metric like a ROI in the short run. You are looking for a
Mm.
metric certainly but at in the longer run. So people are willing to experiment with new ideas. That is one. I would say this is one solution or one way we can crack it. You might be small, but you can be nimble and you can be innovative.
That is interesting, and that example of the fellowship is a good one, because how do you sell a fellowship without having started it? That pudding has to be ready in some form. Otherwise, why would Axis come and just give money? And we have seen that very successful people like you have often done that. Jumped in with whatever resources, come up with whatever small prototype, but showed the proof of concept, and its scalability. So I think that's a big lesson. I'm sure Lalita, you agree, and Jana, that's a great point that we need to put into our report. In all this, there is a question that keeps popping up, and that is the nature of the government as a grantee, as a government as a giver. Uh, is it quite different from the others? Is it as untouchable as some people make it out to be? How has been your experience with the state as a contributor?
You know, I am a big votary of GeoNGO collaboration. In
Yes.
1995, I did this study of the collaboration using Ford money,
Yeah.
and there also I found that government is like an elephant and NGO is like an ant. So,
Mm.
what government people and there are good bureaucrats in government, they are
Yes.
also finding that while we are at scale, we have crores or thousands of crores of rupees, but we don't have a solution to some problems. So NGOs as innovators and government as a replicators is a great combination. In SSG is the greatest example. SSG is the most well-known example
Yeah.
when and watershed is the same way that initially Myrada experimented with watershed with SDC money, Swiss Development Corporation money. It was called a PDO. It was a program. Then got replicated and became a national watershed program.
Mm.
So I think government is not a monolith and government is not impervious. And I'll give you this other example. Recently, RCRC signed this MOU with MORD. And
Yes.
can you believe it? This is a many of our friends in the NGO sector believe that we can't work with this government or this government doesn't want to work with us, right?
Correct. Correct.
And on some 28th or 27th of September, as convener of RCRC, I signed an MOU in the Krishi Bhavan with the additional secretary of MORD, with Mr. Tomar being present
Yeah.
virtually, the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development. Why? What is the reason for it? Reason is this that government of India's program called NRLM has 7 crore women as SG members.
Mhm.
Only 1 crore are getting any kind of a livelihood support. So ratio is 1 out of 7. Now the leadership of MORD, the new leadership of MORD thinks, Mr. Sinha, that during his tenure, can he make it 7 out of 7? That means all 7 crore women can get livelihood support. That would be his legacy. That is his thinking. So he said, who can work with me on that? So he's looking for partnerships. So he started looking, and I'm sure he's done other partnership agreements also. But he thought these guys who have 1,300 crore as a collective individual and annual grants, basically people are very capable here. People like Pradhan, and if I do an MOU with them at once in 7, 8, 10 states, I'll get partners who are great in livelihoods.
Yeah.
That is his thinking. So it's not something to me to boast about, but something to boast about our leadership in the government to think such strategically for Mr. Sinha's capability to take risk, because he knows that who doesn't know more than the somebody sitting in the government that he is taking a risk by talking to and working with and signing an agreement with the NGOs. So I think I'm just saying, trying to make the point that there are very good, great people in the government. And of course,
Anjana, have we lost Ved?
I think he logged back in through. He dropped off the call.
Because suddenly I think
His
broke.
internet is unstable.
Yeah. Okay. Um, let's see if he manages to get in. And if he does, Anjana,
Yes, sir.
can you take over? And I would get Lalita and Shantanu and Rajesh Singhi. These are the three people I want to hear from.
Okay.
Right? Because my thing is also acting up. I suddenly froze.
Yeah, sir.
Uh,
Okay, sir.
Yeah, Rajesh,
I think
welcome. Yeah,
uh, what I'd
yes,
like to say is Wade's definition of small
right.
is large compared to Pluster's definition of small.
Very
We're looking at
absolutely
20
true.
lakhs per year as a turnover. He's looking
Yeah.
at 1 crore as a turnover. I think there's a
True,
huge
true,
gap
Lalita.
there.
True, Lalita.
So
Very
I
true.
wanted to ask him what thoughts he has for this segment.
That's a question I wanted too. That
Yeah.
there are millions of NGOs that work with a lakh a month or whatever.
Yeah, with
So
5 to 10 lakhs is
correct. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. How do
Uh,
they?
over to the
That
others. Anybody else who would like to?
yeah. Rajesh, anything that
Yes,
you have to say? Good to see you, boss.
thank you. I joined a little late, so I didn't
So you missed out
get
on
the.
the good part. The good part was when he said that the best organization was Ibtida and the best chap who led Ibtida was Rajesh. So अच्छा ही हुआ you missed out. No, actually he said that, so I'm not making it up. I have a dozen eyewitnesses.
So I hope
Great.
he comes back, and till that time. So yeah, see, that's an issue which has been kind of in the sector, that there are large organizations which are doing good work, but also their costs are high and they need the larger resources, like 50 crores, 100 crores, 20 crores, and the smaller ones who need only maybe 10, 20, 30 lakhs, they sort of are unable to even get that kind of support. And now with the FCRA amendment, where you can't transfer FCRA funds to other NGOs, that has become all the more difficult. So there is a huge need to bring the smaller organizations, both in terms of their capabilities to do projects in a more professional way, and also to help them to be, so that they get no required funds and do their programs in maybe limited geographies, 10, 20, 30 villages. And I guess there are also kinds of organizations who are not our types, no, rural development organizations or development sector organizations. There are other kinds also, running small orphanages or elderly uh, care homes, or doing some eye camps or things like that. Those kinds of organizations, I don't know how do they manage to get the money, but they don't typically get the grants, the kinds of we people get. So that's again an area where I think the funds should be flowing to, because they also do some genuine work or the kind of work that is required. So yes, बहुत सारा सेक्टर में big players हैं who take away large chunk of funds. I somehow also feel that we need to understand, study the sector in a more detailed way to understand these trends. These are only general uh, uh, feelings or observations, but we don't really know what are the trends in terms of data. So if somebody can do that, to understand that India's voluntary sector will be a good project to someone to work on, because people have been saying, no, government is saying 31 lakh NGOs. Where are they? I that time told that by that logic, there should be 4.7 NGOs in every village of India. There are about 6 lakh or 7 lakh some villages. So that's how I calculate it. So there are registered NGOs, but the kind of who are doing some social work or development work or philanthropy work, who are they? How many are they? How do they operate? Where do they get money from? How many people do they serve? So that would be interesting, maybe a 5-year project to understand all these things in detail. Yeah. Thank you. आमिर भी गए? आमिर, ललिता.
I'm here, Rajiv. I heard you.
Okay.
I do agree with what you say. There are all kinds of NGOs, and I think Ved also made that point. That
Okay.
there are some kind of NGOs which survive more easily than others. Especially, he was making the point about Dalit and Bahujan NGOs suffering more than or NGOs serving more disadvantaged or vulnerable communities.
Yeah.
They're suffering more during the pandemic. So those are all issues that, as a sector, I think one is what the outsiders need. The other is how we come together to voice. And there I see RC as a wonderful initiative.
So I just spoke to Ved Arya sir. I think he won't be joining us back. He's having some trouble. So on behalf of CDPB and Plus Trust, I thank everybody. Thank you, Rajesh sir, for your inputs, and thank you for joining.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you all.